Trisha Yearwood is just outside of London at the National Archives, where she just learned that her ancestor, Samuel Winslet, was sentenced to death by hanging.
I can't imagine what it must have felt like to be sitting in the courtroom and hear, this is your sentence.
Yeah.
You're guilty and you're going to be hanged. I mean,
Yeah.
it's almost hard to imagine hearing those words.
But over here,
Does this say reprieved? Is that what that says?
that's what that says.
Is there information here that tells me why they decided to reprieve the sentence?
We do have another record. It tells us a little bit more about this process of how Samuel and John were reprieved. This is a volume from the State Papers.
This is Whitehall, dated the 19th of February, 1766. So this is several months later, after the verdict has been handed down.
This section here does say a little bit about the reprieval process.
His Majesty has thereupon been graciously pleased to extend his royal mercy to them upon the said condition that you may give the necessary orders for the transportation of the said John Winslet and Samuel Winslet for the term of 14 years to some of His Majesty's colonies and plantations in America. So this is saying the judge took this to the king and recommended that all of these prisoners that day were fit to be of service in the colonies.
Yep, that's right.
Wow.
This becomes a standard part of justice in this period. Using transportation as the alternative is common from about 1718 onwards, with an act called the Transportation Act that allows the courts to send tens of thousands of criminals to America, the main destination in this time for convicts.
With public outcry over executions rising, the British government began sentencing convicts to servitude in the colonies, where they filled a demand for cheap labor. Samuel and tens of thousands of prisoners like him were transported to America in chains and then auctioned off to businessmen and plantation owners. Samuel would have been considered property for the duration of his 14-year sentence, during which time treatment of prisoners was notoriously harsh, and there were no limits to how much they could be forced to work.
It's a long sentence, 14 years.
And he doesn't know anything about where he's going. He doesn't know what the conditions are going to be there. And to be a 20-year-old boy, basically. Yeah. In my head, I'm thinking, well, if he makes passage and he gets to America, then he steps on the land of opportunity and everyone welcomes him with open arms, and that's not the way it is.
Not always. Once he arrived, the next big question was what kind of master or owner would he have? Many convicts that were treated quite harshly, they've been purchased, the owner wants to get as much labor out of them as possible, and they have virtually no rights.
But it certainly beats hanging.
Yeah, as I say, the alternatives weren't too great.
I think this happening to him, which is a terrible thing, is probably what saved his life. To get out of this situation, because he was in extreme poverty. He had nothing to live for, and as daunting as it was, it seemed like it gave him a new life, and in turn, of course, is why I'm here. So it's good.
Yeah.
Can we find out where Samuel actually did land?
Convicts can be hard to trace. It may be that the best way to continue looking for Samuel is to go to the place where we know he ended up, Georgia, and look in some of the records there.
So my next stop is basically home.
That's great. Well, best of luck with that.
Thank you so much, James.
Well,
I really do appreciate it.
I'm really rooting for Samuel. You know, I really just feel like from the day he was born, it has been obstacle after obstacle. And so when you see the word you're reprieved, you think, well, this is wonderful, and really the best thing that ever happened to him. He's in this horrible situation and he does something really bad, and it turns out to be probably a God thing where this is where you're supposed to be. And the only way you'll survive is if you get out of here. So what I know now is that Samuel is on a ship bound for the colonies. I don't know anything from there. I don't know what situation he went into. There's a million possibilities of what could have happened to Samuel. So I'm gonna head to Georgia and find out.